unstoppable kick-ass confidence. Are you ready?
Welcome to the Raw and Unscripted show with Christopher Rausch, where we help you overcome your self-created crap without the self-help fluffy bullshit. Now please welcome our host, Christopher Rausch.
And please welcome our host, Christopher Rausch. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, rock stars of the Kick-Ass Nation? It is I, Christopher Rausch, your No Excuses coach, and I'm back here with another episode of the Raw and Unscripted show, the place where I help you overcome your self-created crap without the self-help fluffy bullshit. And tonight, we've got a great conversation for you. I'm excited for the conversation tonight. We haven't had a guest on the Raw and Unscripted show in quite some time because you guys have asked me, hey, Chris, can you do more solo shows? Can you do more training shows? Can you talk about this and that? And you guys have been sending me awesome information of what it is to talk about. But tonight I want to talk about, and you guys know I've been talking about this a little bit. I want to talk about reality. I want to talk about humanity. I want to talk about what's going on in the world, and I want to do it in such a way that you listening to this, wherever you're at in the world, and I know that we're huge in a lot of countries right now, over 66 countries, I think it is. And I'm pretty impressed with that, considering we were in about 30 countries for quite some time. We've been doing this show now for, 5.5, almost 6 years. We've been doing this particular show, Raw and Unscripted. And the goal with you guys listening across the world is that we can really stop and listen. And I'm seeing some beautiful things happen in humanity all across the world. I don't follow the news. I don't watch the news. I don't follow politics. I have to protect my mental health because I was a news junkie and I was a political junkie. And I was one of those people that was like, I know I'm right and you guys are wrong. And I would watch the news and I'd watch politics and I would go to work, on Monday, and I'd be ready to debate with people. And I'd be ready to debate with wherever I went to prove people wrong or to have that conversation, to have that argument. And then I realized one day I was yelling at the television and I was so frustrated that I had to stop. I had to stop and I had to ask myself, what value am I providing humanity? What value am I providing my family? What things am I doing constructively with this energy, with this passion, aside from feeling justified in proving people wrong or making people feel bad for their opinions or whatever it might have been that I did indirectly, because sometimes we do things indirectly without realizing it. And I sat there and I thought, you know what? I'm going to take 10 days and I'm not going to watch the news and I'm not going to follow politics. And I found myself happier. I found my mental health much better. I found myself focusing on different things. I wasn't out of touch and I wasn't burying my head in the sand, but it also gave me an opportunity to reflect. And this is really a time in my life where I started applying one of the major rules of life that I highly recommend all of you and all of us to really embrace. And that rule, that thought of life is that you seek first to understand, then you be understood, right? But so oftentimes, what do we want to do? We want to be understood. We want to be right. I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to show you that I've got the intelligence. I'm going to get the respect that I deserve when we go into this duel, whatever it might be. But you may have felt this even when you listen to this or you watch this. If I'm out to prove you wrong, what is your immediate reaction? What's your visceral reaction? Oh, the fuck you are. You're not going to prove me wrong, bitch. I'm going to bring my A game and I'm going to prove you wrong. And then what do? We battle back and forth. We battle back and forth in our brains. What are we doing? While the other person's thinking, what are we doing? While the other person's talking, what are we doing? If we're in that defensive kind of prove you wrong kind of thing, what are we doing? We're thinking about the things we're going to say next without even listening to what the person's saying, right? When I caught myself and I sat there and said, you know what, I'm going to listen a little more than I talk in this conversation. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask this person some questions before I make an assumption, before I interject my opinion, just to make sure, because guess what? Chris has been wrong many times in his assumption. And then also we have this thing called selective hearing disorder, where we don't pay attention because we're flipping on our phone. We're listening for the buzz. We're looking at everything else. And we hear somebody talking and we're embarrassed because the person probably said maybe 75 words. We heard 10. And what do? Oh, yeah. Right. Isn't that true? Instead of just going, you know what? I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't hear part of what you said. And really what I'd like to do is understand what it is that you're saying. So I apologize for that. I was not doing my best. I'd like for you to say that again so I can pay attention this time. But how many times have we said that? We've made the assumption, right? Because we're embarrassed and oh yeah, well, here's what I think you're saying, and da da da. And if you're saying this and da da da, and then I would say this, and then and then you're not even listening. But when you stop, and this is the conversation we're going to have tonight with my guest, when you stop and you listen, you start asking questions and you start saying, hey, can you tell me more about that? And you start asking in your mind, instead of what is different or how can I prove this wrong, where are we in alignment? Where can we find agreement? Where is there something perhaps that I can see that we don't agree on, that perhaps we can choose to find middle ground in this conversation? I've done that professionally, business, all assets of my life, all aspects of my life. And when I've done that, guess what? My relationships have improved. My self-esteem, my self-respect, my self-confidence has gone up because I realize I don't have all the answers. And all the times that I have stopped and I've done this, which is quite a lot. I'm not perfect at it, but quite a lot. When I've done that, I've actually recognized that I could have potentially made an assumption or an assertion or whatever it might have been in that situation, but instead I didn't. Instead, I asked more questions. And you know what the person said? Hey, Chris, I really appreciate you asking questions. I really appreciate you listening. I can tell by the look on your face. I can tell by the engagement that you're genuinely interested in this from me, right? Because I'm going to tell you guys this, and we're going to think about this for a moment. It's not what you say. It's how you say it, right? Body language is 85% of all of our communication. So when you guys are out here, and I'm not saying you guys, but when people are out there and on their keyboard warriors and doing all that shit, guess what? You lose all inference of what that person was saying. And I'll give you an example before I introduce my guest tonight. Just today, I posted a meme, message, whatever you want to say. And I posted this multiple times. It says something to the effect of blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you make bad decisions. Sometimes you make stupid decisions or something like that. Like, we all have to accept responsibilities that we fuck up. And some people don't accept responsibility and they blame everybody else. So it's just kind of a little bit more out there for everybody to, hey, am I taking responsibility for what it is that's going on in my life, or am I blaming everybody else? Because when you blame people, you give away your power. And an individual that I mean, you guys will know I'm on there. I deleted it, or I deleted him. An individual that I have known for fucking over 13 years, used to work with me, used to be one of my staff, took that meme completely opposite and took it to mean something about his unborn dead son. And then proceeded to lambaste me on social media for that. And I apologize there. Hey, Johnny, did not mean that. Send Johnny a private message. Hey, man, bro, did not mean that at all. Johnny says, oh, I know you didn't. Goodbye, my friend. And then I texted him, and because I went to his Facebook page and I couldn't see him anymore. And I've had people say goodbye and actually try to kill themselves. Not saying this is that situation, but when I hear somebody say goodbye, my friend, without context or understanding, I text him, I'm like, dude, what's going on? Are you okay? Are you fine? Yeah, I'm totally fine. He goes, I took your post the wrong way, but I just didn't appreciate it. I said, again, apologies, dude. And then I said, by the way, did you block me? And then he didn't respond. So sometimes things are taken out of context, and that can be very frustrating. It's very disappointing. So in your life, let's make it a point to seek to understand, then to be understood. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read something to you, the reason why I invited this guest on, and then we're going to dig into it. So here is something that I wrote. I've been watching this guy's post for a while now, not because he's loud, but because he's real. Casey Connell isn't afraid to talk to people who see the world completely different than he does, right? Think about that. He's not chasing likes. He's chasing understanding. And in a world full of echo chambers, that's something I respect the hell out of. So today we're diving into how curiosity, conversation, and connection how can we create that in a divided world? This is one honest talk at a time. So here's what I saw him write. He said, what could society do to repair the division and start looking for solutions which would compromise effective something or other? I'm sorry, my cursor broke it off. And so I found him, he goes, I find myself confused more often than I would because people use words in places I wouldn't think to. The sentence doesn't make sense, and I end up having to ask a question or two to clarify the meaning. Sometimes that goes well, and others it goes very badly. I'm certainly no linguist, and I'm sure I know all of the proper uses for words, but assuming things like that I'm stupid in these kinds of conversations is pretty crappy reaction. I admit in the past that I used to have this reaction, assuming someone was less intelligent because they used a word improperly or in a different way than I would. Guilty. Appreciate the honesty. I know that quote progressive in terms of politics means left-leaning people who prefer more radical change. I wonder if it has to mean that, or if it can mean anyone who realizes the system is broken and advocates for more reasonable change, like supporting mental health instead of criminalizing the symptoms of it, like homelessness and drug use. Love that. Again, I wonder. There's curiosity. I wonder if it can mean 2 things, 3 things, 17 different things. And I will tell you this, not bringing politics into it. I know people on different sides of the conversation, different labels, all that shit that I hate. And man, do we have to listen? Because when we do listen, we find that we're more alike than we are different. He goes on to say, that being said, I think we can make the world a much better place if we all sought understanding in those cases rather than acting superior and talking down to people. Again, guilty. And personally, I've seen a lot of people do that. I've seen really intelligent people that I respect and admire. No word of a lie. People I've spoken with on stage, people who I have had as mentors. I've seen them say really stupid shit in social media posts and lost a lot of respect for them. In some cases, I've stopped following people because their pattern, their history illustrates somebody who's not willing to look to the middle and look to what it is that we have in common and look to us as a humanity. And so I've let those people go, and I've suggested other people let those people go too. Not to be in a total echo chamber or a vacuum. We're going to talk about that. So here he goes on to say, and then we're going to bring him on. I like to think that we misunderstand each other more often than we genuinely disagree. Oh, that's so important. That will happen in many cases anyway, but if we want to save our republic, it won't happen by trash talking. Again, let's raise the bar, all of us who are listening to this and watching this. If we seek understanding rather than being right, for starters, that could go a long way to build back some trust. And we do need to build back trust. We won't solve the problems without being able to trust one another again. For my part, stretching the divide in a society in the past, I'm sorry. I'm trying to find ways to build bridges now. Anyone else with me? So think about that. Isn't that beautiful? There was a couple other posts he said. Another one, he says, why does it have to be, if you don't believe what we expect you to, then you're against us? Is it not possible to get to the same place from multiple paths? That was another one of his posts. And this is the last one I'm going to share with you guys. Too often we associate opinions with our characters. So if someone says, I disagree with your opinion, it gets translated to, I think you're a bad person. Wholly agree with that, because I've seen so many conversations, whether I was witnessing, I was mediating it, because I have lots of people who seek me out to mediate challenging conversations. Don't get me started on that. I don't advertise that, so don't hit me up for it. Separating the two is a game changer. So ladies and gentlemen, let's get here the man, the myth, the legend who has said all this, Mr. Casey Connell. What's up, Casey? Welcome to the Raw Unscripted show, man.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for the wonderful intro.
Thank you. So everything that I just shared, my first question to you, sir, my new friend, is what do you want to get across most to people tonight on this conversation that is going on across the world, the spinning blue marble in space? What would Casey Connell like to have a conversation about?
Oh, man, there are just so many conversations to be had. I think that one of the last parts that you were touching on is a really big piece of why there's such a divide. And if you think back to, let's say, the last 20 years of political history, there have been words used by both sides, whether it's deplorables or, I mean, you can think of several other ones by major talking heads on both political sides of the spectrum, and they're definitely meant to demonize the other side. But that being said, I want you to think about the word leverage, for instance. It's just a word, but in different contexts, it means very different things. When you're talking about as an engineer or mechanic, it's like how much fulcrum arm are you getting on a wrench to be able to tighten a bolt down? But in the legal spectrum, it's about what you can use to get your way. Similar concept, but the usage is very different. And I think that if we're more careful in conversation when someone uses a term that we think they might be trying to attack us with, pause for a second and ask, when I hear that word, it sounds like, and then explain yourself. Is that what you meant? Is that what you meant to say? Were you trying to convey this message? And that way, instead of assuming that they're attacking us and going on offense or getting defensive and changing the argument, we can actually continue the conversation and see, because if they are attacking you, then fine. They've already lost the fight because they attacked your character, and there's no reason to continue the conversation anyway. But otherwise, you can then, okay, cool, awesome. Now I better understand what's going on. Please continue, or this is what I have to say to that. Or, you can actually continue having the conversation you need to have at that point in time.
I wholly agree. And I love what you said there, because it's something that I've been doing similarly as well. When somebody's using a word, now I ask them, like, usually it's usually a coaching client or somebody, and when they're using a word, I'll sit there and I'll say, what is your definition, or what's your intention for the meaning of that word in this context? Because somebody will say something, oh, they're stupid. I'm like, okay, so what do you mean by that? What do you mean by they're stupid? Well, they just need to look at different facts, or they just need to look at I'm like, okay, so are they stupid, or are they just uninformed? Well, they're uninformed. Okay. Isn't there things that you're uninformed about as well? Yeah. Okay. So what if we change the word from stupid to we're both seeking information? Let's change how we're looking at it, because if you're going to be putting that out there in the world, if you're going to be putting that out there within yourself, then don't you think the emotions are going to ride with it? And the people that I've asked that about, when they've said something that's been antagonistic or generalizing or throwing the baby out with the bathwater, every single person has said, that's not my intention. That whatever the word they were using. And so they're like, thank you for asking me that, because I've never really thought about that. What are your thoughts on that? Like when we're speaking, I know for me personally, I didn't give it a lot of thought before, because I was just a motor mouth. Oh, that's just how I am. Shit falls out of my mouth. But once I took ownership and responsibility, like, Chris, that's bullshit. Like, you can actually stop and pause and think, okay, what I'm about to say, is this really going to serve the person, or is this going to lift them up? Is it going to cause more conversation? Is it going to cause a divide? What might that be? When I've been able to do that, Casey, then the conversations change. So my question to you is, so oftentimes we're basing our response in a situation based on our emotions first. So how do you handle that? Like, so oftentimes we get emotional and we react, we don't respond, we react, and then we say something we regret, things of that nature. Through this process, how do you disconnect your emotions from it a little bit to be impartial?
I don't know that I specifically could disconnect my emotions, because I think it's important to recognize what's going on. Why is this conversation turning this way? Why is this person seeming like they're triggered? And maybe it's me, maybe it's them, but I seek to figure out whether or not it's a me problem. Am I misunderstanding what they say, or is this a them problem where they're not communicating clearly enough, or they're not using like a word in the context that they think that they're using it in. Like I said, I'm not a linguist. I don't know every single use. Like I've been trumped by some big words as of late in different conversations on social media, and I've had to go to Google and be like, I don't know what this word is. What does this word mean? And
Do you
so
have an
I try to
example of
figure it
one of the
out.
words?
What's that?
Do you have an example of one of the words?
Juxtaposition. I've heard it before.
Yep.
But I didn't actually know what it meant. And it was funny. My girlfriend and I got into a verbal debate about apes and primates and monkeys and like a bunch of stuff. And it was hilarious.
I saw something about monkeys and
yes.
Yeah, I saw that.
It was hilarious because I use terms interchangeably, which in normal conversation with someone who isn't like, you're not really that into monkeys or primates in general, wouldn't necessarily think anything of it. But if you're talking to a biologist, they know the exact difference. And like, obviously they're going to tell that I'm not educated on apes or primates in general. And so that's going to show clearly through, but I'm also not going to be arguing with them about what their specialty is. I'm going to be asking questions. So, but we got into a back and forth about whether or not a monkey is an ape or something. We went on for like 20 minutes just going back and forth. And I'm like Googling stuff, trying to figure out what the heck anything is. I should have just had my 13-year-old tell me, because he knows everything there is to know about dinosaurs and quite a bit about, animals in general, sea life and stuff like that. But yeah, the other one, juxtaposition, I was like, I've heard that before a bunch of times, but I don't know what it actually means. So I need to go look it up before I engage in this conversation. Otherwise, I'm going to look like a dumbass.
Yeah, that's one way to look at that, and I applaud you on that, because that is something we can all do. Like in our conversations for people listening and watching moving forward, just do that. When somebody uses a word, and we could think intelligently, we both know what the meaning of the word is, but for the sake of the conversation and for the sake of perspective, like, ask that person, so what do you mean by stupid? What do you mean by everyone? Like, when you say that, do you really mean everyone? Well, no. Okay. Well, what do you mean? Oh, a segment of the population. Okay. Well, we're not generalizing. Or when people have used that, like, always or never, like my coaching clients, well, I always screw up, or I never am able to make the right decision. I'm like, is that true? Are we making that true? Just because it's a statement, do we need to make that true? Is that something we can sit there and we can look at? My thought for you, and my question for you, Casey, is I look back on my childhood and I look at my mother. I grew up with my mother. We were having a private conversation. I was raised by a single woman, never knew my biological dad. And I learned from my mother how not to have conversations, how not to be, because my mother was emphatically always trying to be right, always right. And she's like, you got to be right. You got to be right. You got to be right. And what I found, Casey, is over a period of time, I'm like, she's always right, but she's never happy. And she's been fired from every job she's ever had. She's lost every relationship. She drove away her sister, her daughter. I mean, my sister. And so for me, it became a point where, okay, I'm going to be right. And I'm going to show my mom, that I could be just like her, and I could win her respect and her love and everything. And it didn't take me until I was 16 to sit there and realize that wasn't the way to go. And that ultimately it's not, do I want to be right? Do I want to be happy? And if I want to be happy, then what can I do to be happy? And it does go back to that seeking first to understand. What was that for you? Did you grow up in a family where conversation was open? Did you grow up having that perspective, or you like me and had to go through some tough shit and realize, okay, there's a different way to do this, and let me try this out?
Yeah, it's mostly the second. Majority of the time it felt like no matter what explanation I had, or what would call justification, excuse, whatever, I was almost never right. Like, there were times when I know dead ass I did or said something exactly the way I remember. Yeah. And I was wrong. Multiple people in my family have done that. And so at one point I realized I'm just not going to win these. And there's no point in trying to continue on a conversation where before I even open my mouth, I'm wrong.
Right.
My piece is not, there's very few things that we can end up talking about where we won't end up in a situation where someone's trying to outshout or prove their point, or, whatever. And it's just like, if I'm not even going to be heard, I don't want to be part of the conversation.
Right.
Like, I will listen to you all day. And because they trained me how to find the faults in speech, I'm really good at it, or at least finding the things that don't make sense. And then when I push that point, oh, you always got to argue, you always got to be right, and everything was just like, look in the mirror, I'm done, I'm walking away, I can't do this anymore.
I had somebody say to me, you always have to be the victim. I'm like, when have I ever been a fucking victim? I wear a goddamn wristband that says thou shalt not be a victim. Like, where did that come from? And I think that's important for this conversation, is people and their beliefs, it all goes back down to their perspectives and their own particular experiences. How has that journey or that challenge been for you as you have gone from being that Casey, the person that, had to be right and had to defend himself and wasn't being heard or listened to becoming the man that you are today and now a parent? Has that shifted some of your relationships in the past for the better, or has it cut off those people entirely?
A little of both. It kind of depends. One of the catalysts for where I'm at today was my marriage failing. There was an awful lot of the perpetuating family, stuff when it came to like how you discipline children, how you handle these different situations and stuff. And I knew that I didn't like it, but I just thought like that's the way. Like I don't know necessarily another way to do it. And
Yeah.
when someone would bring up an alternative, I was never in the frame of mind to be able to receive that and not let it be like, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about, challenged my ego. And so basically after everything collapsed that I thought we were trying to build together, I had a really tough look in the mirror and I was like, well, I followed in my parents' footsteps, and that is not a direction I want my 3 little boys to be following me in. Like if I am going to be their, primary male role model, then I have to do better. And to be perfectly honest, I don't even know where I'm wrong. Because obviously there's probably a dozen things that I am not handling well enough in the moment to be able to avoid these situations. It keeps happening. We kept having arguments. I kept, getting so frustrated that I would start to yell. I've yelled at my kids completely unreasonably. Like I was just so stressed out over life circumstances that I was in bad shape. And so when that happened, I was in individual therapy. We were going to couples counseling. And as soon as my therapist finally, after probably 3 years, told me that I was codependent, and I started doing some research into what that even meant and the behavioral stuff and where it, came up, between that and a parenting class that taught us about attachment theory, I shifted everything. Everything just went right out the window. And I was like, we're going to rebuild from the ground up. Just scrape everything off at the foundation and rebuild it brick by brick. And so that was kind of the point where not only did I understand what a boundary was, like how to set a healthy boundary, and then expect people to follow that. And if they don't, then they told you where they belong. And then the other point was, disconnecting my ego from my beliefs. Yeah. Like I believe that these things to be true because my life experience tells me that they are, but maybe my perspective was tweaked. Maybe I didn't hear what they said correctly. Maybe I'm the problem because I can't control what anybody else is doing. Anybody else is saying anything else. I have to look inward first. I have to figure out whether or not I am contributing to this, or if it's a them problem. And then once I figure that out, I can move forward, but I don't feel superior in any way because I've been on the other side of that seat where I was the asshole. And I'm not saying that I was 100%, the cause of my divorce by any means, but I will take every ounce of responsibility that I deserve to take for it. And I've told my kids that. I've been very clear with them, at least to the age appropriate level that they can understand. These were the issues that I had. These are the reasons that I'm changing how I parent and that I don't yell as much anymore. Like you were talking about, getting rid of the news and getting rid of, politics in general. I quit watching baseball and football almost entirely. I haven't watched the news since 2003, probably. Just, I see clips of stuff on social media from CNN and Fox, and half the time I watch them and I go, that is not what they said. Will you stop twisting this shit? Those are literally not the words.
Yeah, or the context. That's the thing that bugs me the most on me is people seeing something, a blurb, a soundbite, and I got to share this, and this is what they said. Da, da, da. And then I go watch the whole conversation. I'm like, that is not. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, seriously? Come on. Like, and I'll sit there and I'll either, if it's a public post, I'm like, did you actually watch the whole conversation? No. I'm like, I encourage you to go back to listen to the conversation or watch the conversation and let's talk about that, because you're right, Casey. There is that knee-jerk reaction. I told you so. I proved you, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, let's just take a step back and take a look at that. And I know that, and I applaud you for your, number one, your honesty and your vulnerability, both in your personal relationship and sharing it here, because that's the thing that I want to get across to people so much, is that we personally need to take responsibility, that personal accountability to say, hey, like you said, am I contributing? It goes back to the whole thing that I'm teaching my son. I have an 8-year-old son, Jackson, and I talk about deposits and the credits. Like, how are you depositing in the account, or the relationship that you have with me and mom, or now some of the choices are you making, are they taken away from that? Right. So let's not make sure that we're taking more than we're giving. And in that opportunity for you, you got that great chance to illustrate that to your kids and to be that example, because so oftentimes we're telling our kids, or we're telling other people, do as I say, not as I do. And I see people that I have personally respected and admired, who I've had private conversations with, tell me one thing in that context, but then start to develop this whole different persona online. And it's like, okay, who's the real you? And that's what I tell people now. It's like, people say, oh, here's the truth. And I'm like, how do you know what the truth is and what the truth isn't? Like, that's where I started drawing the line. I'm like, I don't know what to fucking believe. I don't know whether to believe CNN, Fox, Newsmag, the New York. I thought, okay, the New York Times is something. Okay, no, they're owned by these people. I thought these people were something. No, and you start realizing, you're like, okay, who's fucking got my best interest at heart? Does anybody? Right. Nope. And I think that's one of the things I've been stressing to so many people now. And I love that you're doing this, is it's not the government's responsibility to come fix us. It's not the government's responsibility to do all the, it's us as a humanity. If we go back to look in history, the tribes and how we all got along at first, perhaps there's something to that. And I know for me, there's been a few times in my life where, in what we're talking about, where I've just shut up and said, hey, can you tell me more about that? I've learned a lot. And so one of the questions I wanted to find out from you is, what is something surprising that you've learned from someone that you disagreed with?
I would say that there are a lot, like in one of the posts that I put up, there are a lot of different ways to reach a conclusion. And some people greatly value one thing over another. So like, if you have 3 kids and your primary goal and responsibility is making sure that they're not hungry, then over most anything else, being able to afford food on the table is priority number 1. If I can't feed my children, nothing else matters. So the argument that Republicans are racist because they don't want to fund these other things, or they don't want to pay higher taxes for X, Y, and Z, it's not a racism thing. It's a survival thing. But sometimes the narrative plays out in a totally different way. I grew up in a very conservative family. I've heard their talking points my entire life, and getting to know people from the other side of the aisle, granted, it takes quite a bit of time to really be able to sit there and listen, because it's very counterintuitive to what I have believed my entire life. But when you actually listen to them explain things, they're looking at the same type of survival mode in a different way. It's not about feeding immigrants or making sure that they have medical care or providing gender affirming care. Like everything else, everybody's afraid of not being able to survive, going into medical bankruptcies, not being able to put food on the table, not having a home to live in. And they all come into play in different sections of what the government has to do to make tough decisions, because we've been overinflating our budget and spending trillions of dollars on national defense that we probably didn't need to in the grand scheme of things, but it's spent now. Mm-hmm. So there's the argument that really tough decisions need to be made, but the consequences of that are severe mental health problems and the death of our population. Like, people are going to die based on the decisions that Congress make, and more people than not don't appreciate that. They just don't. Like, it's not part of the scope of their understanding.
And so that's something you've learned.
Like, it's that we all have our reasons for choosing different things, and jumping to conclusions about why someone else thinks what they do and labeling it, especially in a way that demonizes them, is not the way.
No, because I've found, and I've had a lot of conversations with people, like you said, both sides of the aisle, but both sides of the vax. I do not like labels whatsoever. I've never been a labels guy. I've been misunderstood by the way I looked for most of my life. what you just said there is so true, because ultimately what I've found in having these conversations with people, we ultimately want a lot of the same things. It's just the method. I was explaining somebody to this the other day that has very many different beliefs than myself. And I explained to you, I said, a pendulum, right? The pendulum swings. I said, my thing is that I think the pendulum is swung a little bit this way. And then another president came in and swung a little bit that way. And everybody's gotten more vocal and it's swinging more this way. And people think it needs to swing all the way to the other side to correct it, but it doesn't. It doesn't. And I find that in the conversations that I have, when I get down to the bottom, I say, what do you want for humanity? What would you like? What are the 3 things you'd like to have for all humanity? Security, equality, and housing, or whatever it might be. I'm like, okay, so how do we focus on that? How do we get more emphasis on the solutions? And my question to you, Casey, is the people that you've had these conversations with and the posts that you have done out there, have you found that we often that we're more similar than we are different?
I think that if we look at the conversation the way we need to, then yes. If it's not an us versus them, I have to prove this person wrong, then you can have the conversation about what do we care about together and what can we figure out to solve it, because there's so many different theories that have been at play, and the administrations that we've had going back probably 40 years, 50 years, have all done something that contributed more to the problems that we are facing today than the last administration. It's just, like you said, the pendulum. Someone does this and then someone does that to respond to it, and it just gets worse and worse and worse, because for the most part, the lobbyists are in control. The lobbyists.
Yeah. I was explaining that to somebody the other day.
And since the 70s, CEO pay has gone completely through the roof because they have all of the tax advantage that they can get, and the people who really, really need the help aren't getting it. Everybody says they want to help the poor, but when it comes down to brass taxes, nobody wants to actually step out and take it. Or if you do, it doesn't traditionally end up being through a government organization. I know churches do a lot of work. Some of them don't do the best work in terms of just doing it for humanity's sake. They're doing it for extending their own reach and everything else, which isn't in and of itself a bad thing, but lots of people don't trust churches, so they won't go. They won't be anywhere near a church. And that's because there are some Christians, not all, some Christians who don't really follow, the book that they're supposed to be, paying attention to, or they cherry pick what they want based on how they feel like they're living their life. And, don't be a dick. That's the key. Don't be an asshole. Everything will be so much better.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Raw Unscripted show with Casey Connell. Just don't be a dick. There we got it. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a soundbite from the conversation. It is so true. My question to you, brother, is in this world that's going so chaotically crazy, but is also so incredibly beautiful at the same time, the conversation that I have with a lot of men lately is mental health. And granted, a majority of the people who follow the show, majority of my clients are all women, but I have a ton of men reaching out to me, asking me about mental health. And, Chris, you seem like a strong dude, but you're vulnerable, and you like, how can I be more like that? Would you share with everybody, like, how do you handle and take care of your mental health? And you talked about, I've been wanting to touch on this, but I want to go back to it now. You mentioned earlier in the broadcast, boundaries. So how, being a father of 3, I think you said, juggling all the irons in the fire that you had mentioned before, how does Casey handle and take care of your mental health? And what ideas and what suggestions do you have for people who are listening to this? Perhaps women are listening to this and their men in their life are too proud. They want to bet when they're wrong. What's some advice that you would give people listening to perhaps be able to take better care of their mental health rather than thinking that they have to be fighting for everybody else?
Well, for starters, if you're, let's see here, if you're a sinking ship, you can't save anybody else. So if your mental health isn't solid to begin with, not only are you more likely to bleed on people all over the place, whether it's your kids or your family or, you know, close, you know, coworkers, like whatever, if you're not solid on your own in your head and being able to keep everything that you need to in place, whether it's financially, relationships, just, you know, physical health in general, then your life isn't going to be in balance, and one way or another it's going to teeter off and collapse in some way, shape, or form if you're neglecting that. I think that a big piece of the puzzle is handling or being able to find resilience in your nervous system, because a lot of what we're talking about ends up being arguing, fighting, some kind of, you know, situation where you feel like you have to defend yourself or defend a position or your character or whatever that is.
Yeah, it's fight, flight, or flee.
Yeah.
Fight, flight, or freeze.
Or fawn, but yeah.
Or fuck.
Yeah, fawn too. But that's the thing. It only takes like 5 or 10 seconds when you start to feel your blood boil or your body tense up from anxiety or anger or whatever it is that's starting to build, to sit there and just not do anything. Observe what your body's going through, figure out and label whatever it is. Am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling angry? Do I feel like I want to fight this person, and why?
Right.
Before you do anything, you know, just even if you have to say, give me just a second. I got to process something. I got to make sure I heard what that was, right, or whatever, and figure it out. Because if you can let your nervous system come back down and then actually rehear what was going on, you can figure out whether or not it's a you problem or a them problem. And you're training yourself to trust your judgment, because if you are constantly in those triggered states and you're responding to those and you're just reacting to everything, it's like being a loose cannon. Like, you're going to blow stuff all over the place. Nobody's going to trust you or your judgment. And like, you have to be able to get that under control and, you know, bring it back down. Because I posted something today about a conversation I had with my girlfriend 8 months ago. She said something. What I heard, like, I heard every word that she said, and then my brain translated that into something else. And as soon as my brain translated that into something else, I went on a logical jump of 2 or 3 different steps and immediately went, like, she didn't say what I interpreted. And I knew that in the moment. I was sitting there and I was going, wait, what did she? That's not what she said. That's not what she said. But my body was going, she said it. She said it. She said it. And I was like, nope, no, it wasn't it. That was not what she said. But it took a bit. And I had to sit there in it and kind of think my way through it. And by a bit, I don't mean 2 or 3 minutes where I had to pause in that conversation. It took me weeks to fully track down what and why that happened, and then be able to go back and communicate to her. And in the moment, because of all the stuff that she had going on with her business, I did not feel comfortable bringing that shit into her awareness because she didn't notice right away.
Right.
I was just sitting there going, she's gonna need to know, but I don't even have the words right now. And I don't want to freak her out. I don't want her to be worried about me while she's got to be focused on what she's doing with her clients. So I have to sit in this and I have to figure it out, and I will find whatever the answer is. But she was worried after about a week or so that I was clueless about what was going on. And it wasn't that I was clueless. It was that I had not fully tracked down all of the pieces to it yet. And when we finally got to a point where we had a chance to actually communicate, I said, this is what happened. And she just immediately was like, oh, thank God he had a fucking clue what was going on. Because she was terrified. She was so worried that I was clueless, like that my self-awareness of what was going on was totally like kinked out or whatever. And like, I was not there. Granted, I had like 7 other things going on that were stressful,
Right.
But she was not buying my explanations when I tried to deflect it. Oh, it's just the trailer. Oh, it's just the this. Oh, it's just that. Nothing to worry about. And she was not buying it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love the fact that you took that responsibility and that awareness to sit there and say, okay, am I responding to this or am I reacting to this? And I think what people can do who are listening right now, and it's something that's been instrumental in my life, is just to stop and say, why am I taking this so personal? Like, why am I making this what am I making this to mean about me?
Yeah.
Like, oftentimes we go into that reaction based on our experiences, based on old beliefs, based on childhood experiences that elicit that reaction that, oh, no, you're not.
Yeah. What she said was not about me, and I made it about me. And I was like,
Right.
It was not about me. So shut the fuck up. Stop pretending like this was about you. This was about someone else. So let it be about them. And now we've got to figure out why we made it about us. What happened? What is it that I feel like I am missing in myself where I heard this instead of that?
Right.
Which,
and did it go back to something from your childhood as you kept digging?
I wouldn't say childhood. I can't remember exactly when a lot of it had to do with this, like a sense of not being good enough. And so maybe that goes back to, like, even when I was learning to do chores and I had to go back and fix it if I didn't do it exactly perfect at the age of 7 or 8, it was like, oh dear God. Yep. The vacuum lines on the carpet had to be just right. If there was a fleck of dust or a hair or anything on the back of the toilet or the sink in the bathroom or whatever it was that I was supposed to be cleaning, if it was not exactly perfect, I had to go back and redo it. And they weren't exactly nice about how they asked either. It wasn't like,
dude, you had the same mom. You had the same mom. My mom would make me rake. I was just telling the story the other day. She would make me rake the leaves.
It was my adoptive father too. But
she would make me rake the leaves, and if I didn't do it right, she would take the entire fucking barrel and throw it out on the lawn again. Same exact thing, dude. Didn't clean the litter box right, dump the shit back, like all the time. Like if I didn't sweep the floor right, she'd pick the trash can up and she goes, do it again. Yeah. And it's true. I mean, that's why I find when I'm talking to people, even for myself, big time, was like, okay, where did I make this agreement in my head that my worth is tied to what other people say? Where did I make this agreement? And then if you ask yourself, you think, oh, wow, that was my childhood. That was everything that had to do with my teachers, my friends, my influencers, family members. They all kind of made me believe that if I wasn't right or if I didn't do it perfect, then I wasn't worthy. And because this person has triggered something in me, like I highly recommend people to find their trigger words. Like I will trigger words and trigger actions. Like I tell my son, do not do anything within the scope of my face. I tell my son that, like, do not get in my face. I have an immediate reaction to defend myself. It's just an innate thing from being beat by my mom or being bullied by kids. I don't like stuff in my face, so I make sure I communicate that. And I've told people in the past, it's not so much anymore, but when somebody would say the word stupid, that would trigger me. And I would go back into that adolescent reaction, fight. You're not going to challenge my worth. And then I started realizing, is that what the person is really intending? Is that person right now, and I just had to go through this with my wife yesterday, is she intending to inflict harm on me based on my reaction to the sentence she just said? Or is she trying to communicate something and probably not thinking the best about her words? The second one. Okay, what can I do? How can I take ownership? Can I walk around and be pissed off and make assumptions all the rest of the day? Or can I just walk up to her and say, hey, did you mean that? Because here's the way I took it. I took it to mean you were calling me lazy. You were basically saying that I was a burden. Right? This is how I took it. And she's like, no. But honesty, I was sitting there. I'm feeling like I'm a burden. I'm feeling like I'm lazy. She was just having a reactionary moment that she did not choose her words and things of that nature, and the things she chose to pick on. Had I not clarified that, we would still not be talking. And so I love the fact that you did that. And I love the fact that you talked about those boundaries, right? And I tell people that self-care, so many times people sit there and say, well, I think it's being selfish. And so I'll ask people, like, on a scale of 1, or the first, tell me who you love the most. And if they have kids, that, oh, my kids. Okay. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being absolute, how much do you love your kids? 10. Okay, great. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how well are you taking care of yourself right now? And you can't pick 7, because most people pick 7. Oh, I'm taking care of myself, a 4, a 3, a 5, maybe a 6. I'm like, okay, so there's a disparity between wanting and intending on being there, a 10 for your kids, but you're only showing up for yourself as a 4 or 5. What are you telling your kids? What message are you sending them? You're sending a message that it's okay to be stressed out and overwhelmed and not take care of yourself and be reactionary and be pissed off and be angry and negative? No. Okay. Then what is it that potentially that you can start to do to reframe that? And for me, I think that's so important, because when we start identifying those boundaries and what we will accept and what we will tolerate in terms of our mental health and our self-care, first of all, the self-love portion of it has to come through in how we take care of ourselves, our mental health, our physical health, our spiritual health. But yet people don't do it, but they hope, wish, and pray that someday something will happen. But yet they're lying to their kids through their actions and their words of not taking care of themselves. So in all of this, that was a long way of me asking you this question. How are you teaching your kids about what's going on in the world? You talked about earlier, and I want to touch on that, the age appropriate stuff. I mean, obviously there's a lot of things that are happening in the world. I think that things are changing so exponentially fast that it's mind blowing. Mm-hmm. I'm a realist, but also there's this part of me, like every once in a while, I call it peeking above the surface. Like I did some research the other day about AI, and I don't research AI because I'm fucking scared to death of what it's going to do. But I said, you know what? I got to be informed. I got to think about in terms of my son. What is he going to do? He's 8. And so I poked my head above the clouds and did a whole bunch of research on AI and got fucking frightened as hell. And I sat there and I asked one of my mentors, I'm like, what do I do? Like, I don't know what to tell my kid. I don't know if I should tell him to go to college. I have no idea what the next 5, 10, 15 years are going to be. And this person, unfortunately, didn't have anything to tell me. So what are your thoughts on how you are teaching your kids about the reality of what's going on in the world and how they can conduct themselves for success in their personal life and their professional life?
Yeah. It's hard because my oldest is 13, but he's mentally probably closer to a 5, 6, 7, something like that in most ways. He definitely understands some reasonably age appropriate concepts, but it's hard to kind of sift through his understanding to try to like piece everything together, because he still beats up on his little brothers because he thinks that they bullied him, and it's like, no, you were an asshole first. That's why this happened. This thing that you thought was silly, they took as an attack, and then they retaliated, and their retaliation was your first instinct that something was wrong, so you attacked back, but you started that. This thing that you did started that chain of events, and he is not getting it. And so that makes things a lot more difficult when it comes to everything, because my next oldest, who's 11, is getting to the point where he understands, and he gets frustrated with his older brother for similar reasons. And I've had to pull him aside and try to explain to him that because his brother's brain works differently,
right,
there's not a lot that we can do other than protect ourselves and be compassionate for what he's going through, because his brain literally works differently. And this is probably the biggest piece to like my self-reflection and my reflection back to society. It's his reality is so much different than the world that I live in that there's very little to compare. Like, it's really, really hard to compare how he interprets the world coming into him and how it interacts with him versus what everybody else is doing. Like, he's 13 years old. He's starting to go through puberty. He just barely asked about what sex was because a computer robot thing on the, like a ask 20 questions kind of a robot online asked a question that had the word in it.
Wow.
And I told him that it was how we categorize the difference between men and women. And I left it at that. He seemed happy with that answer, but he has no idea. Like, he knows that girls exist, but he has no interest in any of those things. And by the time I was like 7, I was like, she's cute. I like her.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so is my 11-year-old. And I think overall, you have to really like dial in on your kids, period, and like understand where they're at.
Yeah.
And so I have to support each of them differently. I have to support the 13-year-old on the spectrum as more like a 5 to 7-year-old with the strength of a teenager and the height. He's like 5'4". He's just a little bit taller than my girlfriend now, and she's not happy about it. But I have to treat him in a different, more compassionate, understanding way than I have to deal with my 11-year-old sometimes. I try to hold space for them when they get frustrated or upset. I will, back them off and say, hey, talk to me about what's going on. Obviously something's wrong. I don't know what's going on inside your head, but I need to understand it so that we can fix the energy that's going on in the house right now, because you are pissed. Very easy to see that you're very angry, but I'd like to figure out whether this is a you problem or a them problem, and then we can kind of take a step in from there. But first, you got to de-escalate everything, bring him out of that, animal brain that they're in. And then his little brother is 7, and he is a little freaking cannon, man. Sometimes he just, it's like, dude, why did you do that? I don't know.
You have your hands full, dude. I have one 8-year-old. I can't even imagine.
You can't do that. Yeah, it's super fun, but I think because of everything that I've been through and having to go back and rebuild, I see so many different things that I recognize from my own behavior as a kid in them.
Right.
And then I can like heal my inner child while at the same time helping them through it. Because it's like, all right, they just did what I did. How do I wish my parents would have reacted? And then do that. And then try it. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes it doesn't work well at all. But for the most part, it seems to be like my kids are wonderful. And I find myself going, God damn it, I fucked that up so often. And you take a step back, and like, I think the one major difference between me and my parents is I go into my kids constantly and say, hey, I messed up.
That's what I was looking for, brother. That's what I was.
I
was
just yelled at you. I
thing.
shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. That was not cool. It's not your fault. It's my fault.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if you don't have the ability to say that you were wrong, they're not going to want to do it either. When the main parental figures in their life, or the people that they look up to, can say, hey, I made a mistake, own it, and fix the behavior. Now they've not only seen it modeled, but they're not always going to feel like they're wrong.
Exactly. I love the fact that you said that, Casey, because I have had that same situation. It's funny when we watch our kids, we see I call it the lights coming on. You start to see them process things that you say in a different way. You don't see them take it just for granted that you say something like, oh, well, can you do that? Like, I'd said something to my son probably about 4 months ago, and we call him 17 times Jackson, which you have to tell him 17 times to pick up your clothes. 17 times we're going to go somewhere. And honestly, Casey, he has two speeds, slow and stop. And I'll give you a guess. I'm fucking 4th gear wide open. Like, I am a go-getter. I am a hustler. Let's go. We're going to do the fuck. Da, 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 da. And he is slow. It was so bad. And so I made the comment. I'm like, and I had to ask, it was like 7 different things in a couple hour period of time where pick up your thing, da, 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 da. And I said, why do you have to be such a pain in the ass sometimes? That hit. Yeah. He started crying, Casey. He started crying where I was putting him to bed. And he started crying. And that was the first time I recognized that what I said, the words that I have now have meaning and value to him. Like, before, you could say stuff and it's like, oh yeah. But that moment, he took that personal, and I stopped right there and I said, buddy, I am so sorry. I said, Daddy did not choose his words correctly. I am so sorry. And I apologized, gave him hugs, gave him kisses, got him to calm down. And then in that moment, he was fine. And then I said, but I want you to understand something. And I need you to take responsibility in this as well, because Daddy got frustrated, but Daddy had to get pushed to the point where I raised my voice and when I did something, and then you finally took action on the things that you needed to do. I said, so can you see how you were kind of being a pain in the butt? Yeah, kind of. I'm like, so what can we do differently in the future so that I don't have to raise my voice and get frustrated and say stuff that I don't mean and I don't want to hurt you? What can we do differently? Like looking for that collaboration. And maybe he's going to tell me something, like maybe Dad, like one time he told me, he goes, why do I have to pick up my toys so much when I keep using them? And I thought, that's kind of logical. I said, because we take care of our things and because somebody gets step on them or the cat, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. But in that moment, he stopped and he said, he goes, I need to do a better job of listening. I said, there we go, buddy. I said, so if you could do that, if we can work together on this and you could do a little bit better job in picking up and knowing that, hey, Mom and Dad are going to ask you to pick up your toys, pick up your clothes, put your clothes away. I said, as you get older, you're going to have more responsibilities because we're teaching you how to be an adult. That's the whole goal, is for you to be independent upon yourself. And this, Mom and Dad have to teach you stuff. And it's important that you learn this. So you can choose to learn it now, or you can choose to learn it later. That's your choice. But I love the fact that you did that, because so oftentimes we are telling our kids like, well, don't do what I do, but do this. And then we penalize them for not doing what we told them, but they did how they see us. My thought to you as we kind of round out this conversation is, what advice do you have for people who are listening to this conversation? And funny, Jock Brokus is here. What's up, buddy? One of my dear friends and mentors. For you, sorry, I lost track. Let me go back to thinking about this. For the people that are watching and listening and having a challenge with this, being able to stop and process in the moment that they're having some sort of reaction, what are a couple of things maybe that you might recommend for them to do in those moments that you've used for that awareness and for that pause?
I mean, there's nothing like the first time your child looks at you and cries because of something that you said out of anger, not because they didn't get what they wanted, because that happens all the time. But like if you pull off and say something kind of like what you were talking about, or, it's going to happen at some point, because humans have that trait just naturally. But one of the things that has really helped me, because I don't feel like it was a thing, like it wasn't something that people thought about, I guess, when I was growing up, or even maybe the generation right after me, was that children's brains do not operate like adult brains.
No, they do not.
The assumption that you can treat a child the way you would treat an adult, like they should know these things, it's general knowledge, you should know how to do this, is ridiculous. The human brain does not fully form until your early to mid 20s.
Yep.
You don't have the same cognitive ability at 6 or 2 or 10 or 15. Like, there are stages of their ability to understand things. And if you keep trying to force it down their throats, it is going to go badly. You're going to frustrate the hell out of yourself. And depending on your, method of, frustration relief, punch a heavy bag, punch a drywall wall, just whatever it is,
right?
That is going to be the logical path, unless we realize that our kids need the space to make mistakes, because this is their trial run.
Yep.
You get all the mistakes that you can up until 18, and then you got to start taking life really seriously, because lots of bad things can happen. I'm not sure that specifically answers your question.
No, it does. And what I was thinking about for myself, I tell people, like, guys, I say, pushing in the clutch. For anybody who knows how to drive a stick shift, you have to push in the clutch before you shift the gear. Most people don't know that anymore. Or I tell some other people, like, you got to pump the brakes. For people who have never had bad brakes, you got to pump them up sometimes before they fade. I have so many different analogies, but for me, when I stop and I pause, I tell myself, okay, take 4 breaths. So my immediate disruptor was I talk about how can we disrupt those thoughts, those negative thoughts? How can we disrupt the pattern of worthlessness and the pattern of negative self-talk? For me, it's 4 breaths.
Yeah, mine is
4 seconds.
Is 4 seconds. Breathing?
Yep, box breathing. Okay. Yeah. So once I started doing that, I realized that I was breathing very shallow. I was not getting oxygen in my brain. I was not allowing myself the opportunity to make rational thoughts, that I was in that reptilian side and that knee-jerk reaction. And I just sat there, and I love what you said before. And I do this as well. It's like, you know what, give me a moment to process that. Whether it's a text or it's a Facebook message or it's a video response or it's somebody in person, I will sit there. Before I felt like I had to respond. But I would sit there and I'm like, you just posed something really interesting. I want to give that some thought. Can I get back to you tomorrow? Or if it's a serious conversation or whatever it might be, you just gave me something to think about. Where inside I'm like, oh, you motherfucker. I'm like, you gave me something to think about. Let me pause on this for a second. And then what I'll do, honestly, is before I'd be like, okay, I dodged that bullet. Now let me reframe how I need to say what I need to say in order to still prove I'm right. And then what I started doing was pausing and saying, what part of what they said could be true? So I did the deep breaths, distanced myself from taking it personal, and then started logically saying, okay, what part of what they just said might be true? And what can I see how is it true for them? And starting to, again, going back to what we said, this whole conversation is that seek to understand. And so for me, being able to do that, I have instilled so much respect in other people that before had an assumption of me, because I am so vocal and because I'm so strong and so confident, all these other things, that they would take it as arrogance, or they would take it as a conceitedism and stuff like that. But when I started demonstrating that, the outpouring of people saying, hey, Chris, I saw what you did. And I respect you for that. And being able to do that in such a way that all I would do is just ask that person, like, thank you for recognizing that, and just be that for somebody else. You know what, Chris, I never thought about that. And together, if we can just start, or just not even start, but continuing doing what you and I are doing here, what you're doing on social media, what I'm doing on social media, what we're doing in our personal conversations, if we can continue to be that light and to be that opportunity, be that doorway. I call it being a door. Can you be a doorway for somebody that perhaps maybe hasn't had the situations and circumstances that you've had to be able to have such a wide perspective? And I say that for myself. I've been all over the world. There's so many different things, but I have this wide perspective. But some people have never been out of their state. They've never been out of their city. They've only had the people in their lives. How can I open that up for somebody? So as we round out the conversation, what are some questions that you like to either ask yourself or ask others as you're doing the social media posts? Like I shared before, if you guys came in halfway the conversation, go back and listen to the beginning, because I shared a lot of what Casey shares and the reason why I have him on the show and why I wanted to have this conversation with him. But for me, questions are so powerful. What are some questions that you might ask yourself or you might ask others to create that space?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest question that I ask myself and my kids constantly is why. You don't always get an answer, but why did they say that? Why do they believe that? Why do I believe this? Why did I react that way? Why something? There's always, human behavior is incredibly diverse. And in a world where we're just starting to really understand more about like autism and or neurodivergence, where
it's Tylenol, dude. I found out it's Tylenol.
Yeah, totally.
What's up, Scott? Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, there are dozens of ways. I'm going to throw small numbers out there because I'll go nerdy and say thousands or millions or some stupid thing and just go from there. But there are dozens of ways to get to the same conclusion or a different conclusion. Everybody weighs the information that they take in differently based on the life that they lived. Their life experience is not invalid. They may draw conclusions about those experiences differently than we do, or than I do, or than you do, but that does not make their life experience invalid.
Right.
But if you can maintain the composure and you can ask the right questions, hey, why do you believe that this is the case? Why does it have to be this way or that way? Is there another option? Because so many times we get stuck in this,
Yep.
dichotomy where it's like there's only two choices and you have to pick one. I haven't picked a presidential candidate that won since George W. Bush in my first election when I was 18. I voted third party almost every other time. No, literally every other time. Because I'm just like, both of these asshats need to shut the hell up and go sit down.
Right.
Because one of my favorite things is logical fallacy bingo during presidential debates, because you can pull out that card in the first 5 minutes. But most people don't even know what a logical fallacy is. I was 25, 26 before I took a critical thinking logic course at my community college as part of finishing up my associate's degree.
I did the same.
Is very eye-opening because there are so many logical fallacies floating around everywhere on the news and political discussions and everything else. It just clouds everything. But I think to get back to it, everyone has a reason for doing what they do. And if you challenge their not necessarily the reason, but if you challenge a part of their logical chain,
their identity,
it becomes part of their identity, and they will defend it like they would defend their own life.
Yep.
But if you ask, or you sit back and you say, that's interesting, I don't understand this part, can you explain that?
Yep.
Or can you elaborate on that? Those are really great questions, so that if you pre-frame it just a little bit before you ask the question, then they don't feel attacked.
Yep.
And you have to maintain that all the way through, because if you reverse things right afterwards and say, oh, that's stupid because blah, 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 and then you're fucked.
You lose all trust. Yep.
Yeah. So you have to maintain that trust, and you do it by asking questions based on curiosity. I want to understand why you believe what you do. I may not change my mind, and you may not be open to me asking questions that probe that farther, all the way down to the point where it falls apart logically. Some people won't see it. Some people will, and then they get frustrated or, whatever. And it's like, hey, it's okay. We're not fighting here. We're just talking. Just a conversation. So lots of wise pre-framing to make sure that they understand you're not trying to come after them for believing something differently than you do. I just want to understand why you believe what you believe. Because if you can have that conversation and they label you as their opponent at the start of it, they will flip that at the end. Because I've been called a libtard by Republicans, and I've been called a racist by liberals, and I've been called everything in between. But it was just like, I've been a white knight and a misogynist in the same conversation with the same person. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with these people?
Right?
Did they not hear themselves? But it's just, I've been called every name in the book. And if you ask Nicole, she knows my heart is, what I lead with as a baseline. Like, I want to understand people. I want them to feel loved, and I want them to feel validated in whatever it is that they believe, even if I believe something else.
Yes.
Like, you need to be heard. If they don't feel heard to start with, they're not going to listen to you.
Casey Connell, you got a beautiful soul, brother. Seriously. I appreciate this conversation. I appreciate the time that you took to spend with me and dancing in this. I truly hope that the people that are listening to this and watching this are able to take what we've shared from our hearts and from our experiences, from the vulnerabilities of the conversation, and they're able to process a couple of things for themselves. And I encourage you guys who are listening and watching, like, okay, what are a couple of things from this conversation that Casey and Chris just had? What are a couple of things that I'm willing to start investing my time and my energy in to create different outcomes out of my relationships? And more importantly, again, if they're parents, like the thing we've been talking about as well, like taking a step back and accepting responsibility for the things that we do and we say, and to communicate with our kids and to let them know that perhaps, we did not carefully think about the things that we were saying or doing, and communicate that, especially with our kids, and communicate that with our spouses and our friends. Hey, I may have said something yesterday that you could have misunderstood. I would like to clarify that, right? Sometimes we need to go proactively, and I've had to do that, where I've thought about a conversation where I'm like, oh, I wonder how that person took that. I don't think that person's going to be brave enough to tell me perhaps that I offended them. So let me go back and, hey, there was something I said yesterday that I hope you took in the right respect. well, you know what, Chris, I did kind of feel, okay, great. Let's have that conversation. And that's what you demonstrate and illustrate. And I believe that's beautiful. Man, I want to continue having these conversations and continue supporting one another. Where can people get a hold of you and learn more about you, Mr. Casey?
Yeah. So it looks like my Instagram's on the screen. Instagram at @that_autism_dad. It's the same for TikTok as well. The YouTube channel is at Body Mind Life Upgrade. Yeah, and then I actually have a copy of my book here that I wrote and published on Amazon. It's A Shot in the Dark.
Jesus Christ, we didn't even fucking get into that.
Yeah, the Shot in the Dark, Diary of a Cycle Breaker. It's part memoir, part love story. So it's like a an in-depth look into kind of the thought process that I had when my life fell apart. Gives a little bit of a backstory to kind of explain what I grew up in and how I came to, have everything fall apart. And then all the little pieces that I started putting back together, including falling in love with my girlfriend in the process. So it covers about a year and a half of my life starting in 2022 or so. And it is available on Amazon. I can put a link in the description as needed.
Yeah, definitely put a link in the chat. I apologize. Yeah. I knew about that, and I was so consumed with the social media aspect and everything else that you were posting. So we'll have you back on that. I have to get the book and then I'll read it. But yeah, man, that's thank you for sharing that. I apologize. I mean, that's totally another aspect of the conversation that we could have had. So that'll allow me the opportunity to get to know you better.
Yeah, sure.
All right, brother.
I'm writing another one. It won't be ready for quite some time, but after writing the first one, I have so many things that I learned about how to do it better the second time. That's generally how things go for me. It's like the first time you change brakes takes 45 minutes. The second time it takes you 12. Because you can change my brakes then. Do it wrong.
This lady right here, Nicole Tiffany Cruz, thank you for being here. She says your book is
supposed to be in bed.
Isn't she so wonderful? This Nicole Tiffany Cruz.
She is so fantastic. That is why I claimed her.
You did. I mean, for people who don't know, that's your better half. And I've known Nicole longer than I've known you. Actually, Nicole's been on the show, and she and I have done lives before. Mm-hmm. So thank you, sweetheart, for being here and sharing and supporting your man. I love him. I dig him. Casey, I'm going to put you backstage. Don't go anywhere for a second so I can talk to you for a second afterwards. I'm just going to finish out the show for a second.
Okay.
Cool.
Thanks.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I put your comments up on the screen, but for those of you guys listening on the podcast, I just want to grab a couple of these for you guys listening, because we invite you guys to come and watch the video cast. We do it every single Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I've done it every Tuesday night since January of 2019. We're on episode number 338. We have a bunch of episodes in between, so make sure you guys go back and you check that out. Check it out all on a podcast. But we got Michael Baker in the house. We got Andrew Rimkus in the house, says hello, my friend. We got Jacqueline Rose in the house. Robert Broker says here, a political scientist I learned from, and I do different in how we choose to see things, but we could talk about it. Yeah, that's the important thing, is talking about it. Jacqueline Rose says here, Christopher, you were seeking validation from your mom that you were worth something, that you were good enough. Yes. Oh boy, that took a lot of therapy and a lot of honesty. Robert says here, codependency is brutal. It is true. So for any of you guys who have listened out here and you're like, what is codependency? Do what Casey said and go and Google the shit. Don't make an assumption about what it is that you understand about something. Get curious about the words that you're using. Get curious about the meaning of them. Make sure you understand them correctly, because sometimes we go through the assumption that, oh, here's what I think that word means. But of course, through our experiences, right? Through our experiences, through the people we interact with, everything, the pros and the cons of it all, that's how we learn. Robert says here, humorously related song memory, the politics of dancing by reflex. I'm not sure what that's about. So here's what it is. Here's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. So my invitation to you is, from this conversation tonight, start taking a beat. Start taking a beat on the social media posts that you do. Ask yourself, like, what am I trying to prove? What am I trying to help inform? Or am I just trying to get validation from the echo chamber of everybody who agrees with me? Because I've seen people like trying to prove people wrong, and it's making you look real stupid. And if you don't know what the word stupid is, go look it up. But a lot of people are saying stuff, and it's like, are you bringing value to the conversation? And here's another way of looking at it, right? I'm always looking at it in terms of perspective. Am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution? And if you're just venting, if you're just throwing shit out there without thinking about it, you're part of the problem. And it's okay to accept that responsibility, to take a look and say, you know what? I've been doing this, thinking, or my intention of being sharing information, but perhaps it's been poking people in the face. Perhaps it's too upfront. Perhaps maybe I should, and I tell people to do this, like, what would it be like? And we did this in school. Like, what would it be like to defend the position you're against? Like, so we've done the conversations where people are totally against abortion. I'm like, now you have to defend it. Now you have to support. Why do you support it? And it's through those exercises. It's through shifting our perspective, putting our beliefs and our opinions and our identity and our ego, like Casey said, put that shit on hold, right? What would it be like if I just put it on hold? What would it be like if I wasn't so defensive about other people's opinions? What would that feel like if I wasn't so stressed out about being right? Oh my God, it would feel great. How much more loving and accommodating and sensitive and understanding and all those different, how much different of a person could I be if I no longer held on to that belief? What would it be like if I just opened myself up to the possibilities that I'm wrong? Or maybe open myself up to the possibilities that people in my life were trying to protect me by giving me these beliefs, but maybe that doesn't work for me. And I will share this with you. And you guys got to be careful about this, because I'm seeing kids who I've known for a long time, and I've known their parents. I'm seeing these kids divorce their parents because their parents told them, here's what you have to believe about the Second Amendment. Here's what you have to believe about being a Republican. Here's what you have to believe about immigration. Here's what you have to believe about healthcare. And so they pour their opinions into their kids, and their kids are getting older. And like, I go, yeah, you know what? That doesn't work for me. And these parents are coming to me going, what do I do, Chris? I'm like, now you got to do some repair. Now you have to do a lot of listening and apology. Right. And I've had to have this conversation in my own house because my wife is very passionate, and I know she doesn't watch the podcast. She'll probably watch it after I'm dead and go, oh my God, you talked about me. There again, I'm like, we have to allow our son to form his opinions and his beliefs. And the way it comes across, sometimes I have a challenge with that. So in a marital conversation, in a friendship, and whatever it is, you got to speak up. You got to speak up, man. Don't sit there and die with your passion and your fight in you. There's a responsibility that we have to have uncomfortable conversations. And if you have an uncomfortable conversation with somebody and they don't appreciate it, or they get accusatory or attacking, again, like what Casey and I were talking about, have your boundaries. And I've had to wish people well, and I've hid them. Here's what I do in social media. I'll hide you for 30 days. And then if you're still spouting off the same shit, if I care about you, I will send you a message and say, hey, I'm seeing you post a lot of this stuff. And some people say, hey, thanks for bringing that to my attention. Some people tell me to get bent, and they tell me to get bent in such a way that I say, hey, I wish you all the best. And you got to draw those lines, and it's not being an asshole. It's protecting your mental health. And if people aren't going to open up to the opportunity to see things differently, do you want those people in your world? Do you want that emotion? Do you want that baggage in your social media feed? Do you want it in your personal life? I know people who are, oh shit, when Susan calls, she spends 3 hours complaining about what's going on in the news. I'm like, well, don't fucking talk to Susan then. Oh, well, Susan doesn't have anybody. Well, maybe Susan needs to learn some lessons, and you don't need to be the person that Susan calls and you're the bouncing board for it, because it's not doing you any good, is it? No. Okay. What would it be like if you didn't tolerate that anymore? It'd be amazing. So we got to start looking at protecting ourselves, taking care of ourselves, being the light in the world, because a lot of stuff is going to be happening. I've gotten into it in recent episodes, so you guys can go back and check out those. But let's all just do this. Let's make a commitment right here and right now. We're in 60 plus countries. Let's make this commitment. Number one, when I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to show myself some love. I'm going to show myself some space that maybe I don't know everything. And maybe I'm going to start doing a little bit more seeking to understand than to be understood. And maybe I'm going to sit there and I'm going to do this for the next 3 months, and I'm going to check in with myself and see how I'm doing. Because like I promise you this, when you start taking a look at the things that you're frustrating yourself out about, and the things you're making personal, and the things you're taking as a personal hit to yourself, is going to catch up with you. So for me, I'm spending more time enjoying my moments, creating my moments, and not worrying about what it is that I have zero control over. The control that I have is my response and my love. Like Casey said, my intention every single day is to send love and to send light and to send energy into community and humanity to everybody, black, brown, white, straight, gay, trans, Republican, Democrat, vax, no vax, whatever you want to put on it. Because at the end of the day, split us down the middle. Split us down the middle. And I've done this conversation in front of thousands of people in an audience. I'm like, look around. You guys are like, oh, that person's different. That person, that person, that person, that person. But you split us down the middle. We're all the same. Right? We donate organs to help save lives of other fellow human beings. We are more the same than we are different. I can tell you this with absolute certainty. So instead of finding what is different about people in your life, start finding commonality, and more importantly, start finding solutions. We'll be back here next week, next Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, live on the video cast. We'd love for you to join. Thank everybody who joined us live. Michael Baker, Casey. Well, I was called a racist in that kind of conversation. Yeah, see, Casey, even my guest is like in here enjoying the show as well. All right, guys. So be back here next Tuesday. We got Elizabeth in the house. What's up, Elizabeth? Elizabeth Montez, a personal friend of mine. What's up? She goes, that was good. I will go back and listen. Thank you, my dear. Go back and listen. And not only do that, do me a favor, share the shit out. Share it out with some words that said, hey, man, I just checked out this conversation from two macho, masculine, hot-looking dudes that should have done it with their shirts off and raised money for cats and dogs. But I will do that next time when we review his book. Yeah, let's go. Let's go do this. All right. I love you guys. I'm going to go spend time with my family. We'll see you next time on the Raw and Unscripted show.